Okay, so we are going to be doing a pen and wash lighthouse today. And so I've had a few requests for longer, more drawn out tutorials, kind of going into more depth, more of a paint along kind of thing. So this will be the first of those, and let me know if these are working. I've had a few people request them, so let me know how they're going. But let's get into it. So with pen and wash, you're basically outlining your scene and then going to work from there. And I'm working off of a reference loosely, but it does not have to be perfect. I like my lines to be a little scraggly, strange looking. Let's see. They don't have to be perfect. We're going for more loose and fun, I think would be a good way to describe this. So you can find any reference you want online, or you can copy mine. Either way is fine, but we're just trying to get the basic shapes of everything. And I'll go back later and do a little bit more detail. Let's see. Another great person to watch is Peter, I believe it's Peter Sheeler. He does great pen and wash. Really anyone on YouTube, like there's so many good people to watch. And you can learn a lot from other people as well. I hope you stick around and watch my videos too, but learn from as many sources as you can, because there's so many great resources out there that you should be using. And that's how I've learned a lot of this as well, Not trying to be selfish, but yeah, this is actually my first lighthouse, and I've never actually practiced this. So if we fail, bummer. That's okay though. I guess if we fail, you'll never see the video because I won't post it. So if you're watching this, then this was a success. And I've purposely angled, as I'm drawing this, for perspective, I'm angling all of my lines arcing like this, and that helps give it the perspective of you being below the lighthouse. So if I were to draw my lines like this, it would look like I'm above the lighthouse. But if you draw them like this, it looks like you're more below it. And if you draw straight lines for your curves, they'll look like you're right in front of it at the same height. So working on that perspective, that can help a ton. Can really make things come together. We'll give them a little door. Let's give it a little door. Perfect. Okay. So you can pretty much do this entire painting with one brush. I really like these thicker, fatter brushes that have finer points. They work a little bit better for me. You can really get a nice even spread, but also you can do really fine detail with that extremely fine point. So if you can get a whole one of these, you'll be set. Sometimes I'll use this for bigger pieces where I have to do a lot of wash, like a sky. But generally this type of brush will work. You can also get some detail brushes, but they're harder to use actually. I'm also using for my pen, I guess I should have said, my Pentalic illustration pen, and it's a 0.3 point, so it's very fine. And I also have a set of these, so there's varying thicknesses. And then for my watercolor paper, I just stepped up and got Arches watercolor paper, which is more expensive for my bigger stuff, but for my smaller stuff, Master's Touch, these little pads surprisingly work fairly well. As long as you're not doing a ton of water on them, they work for the smaller stuff, and I love them. Surprisingly, they're like $5, so you should you should check those out. And then definitely upping your watercolor paper once you start getting into more serious stuff will help you out a ton. I would recommend it. Okay, so for the sky, we're gonna start bringing in some water. I'm just putting a layer of water over all this. Make sure your pen is dry before you do any of this, or else you're gonna smudge it. Yeah, and you can even, you don't have to be right in your lines. You can go a little over, you know. This is just putting your water layer down. And we're trying to work with pretty wet. You don't want huge puddles on your paper at all. But you want to have a nice wash over it, which is where the wash comes from. It doesn't have to be right up to your tape either. We want it to look loose and flowing more than anything. And I guess we'll make this a more sunset setting. Yeah, make sure you're not getting any huge puddles. Like I said, that can make your paint. The paint's gonna go wherever the water is. Keep that in mind. And I don't think I let my pen dry long enough, but that's okay. For this, it'll work. Okay, let's go for it. We're gonna bring a little bit of blue. And I forgot the names of my paints, so forgive me. And we're just gonna start brushing in with a fairly wet brush with a good amount of paint on it. Working into that wet area. And like I said, I'm not bringing it right up to my tape. I want it to be more flowy than that. Yeah, that looks good. Yeah, that works for me. Move that paint around using a fair amount of water, drying it off. Still working with a very wet canvas. And you're able to really push that paint. And when it dries, it'll look less blotchy. You also want to, step up your paint quality when you get more serious about it too. Paper and paint is pretty important. Most important is definitely paper, and then paint is the next most important, because some paints will be more grainy, some paints won't blend as well. So I'm using the Koi watercolor, and that'll be in my description. Find them on Amazon. They're like a good intermediate paint. I also use Winsor and Newton. This little travel thing has served me so well. My wife's grandma actually gave it to me, and these paints are amazing. Winsor and Newton's all around great paints, but I really like the vibrancy of the Koi paints. So if you can get those, they work really well. I like them a lot. For the other part of the sky, I just bring in a tiny bit of black. You really want to wet this down or else it's going to come out black. You want it to be a gray. So adding a ton of water, and we're going to bring more black in. See how that became a little too intense? The nice thing is when you're working with watercolor, is if it's too intense, you can, if it's still wet, pull down the intensity by bringing just a wet brush, and you can kind of smudge it around and pull some of that off if it's still wet. If it dries, you're pretty much stuck with it. So let's see, bring in a little bit more. Yep, see, so that's pretty intense, but if you come back with a wet brush before it dries, and you should have a pretty good working time with this paper as long as you keep it fairly wet. You should have a good few minutes before it starts to set. Yeah, that looks nice. That looks very nice. Okay. For the other side, I should have left a little bit more spot open for it, but I'm going to add in a little yellow to that blue, and hopefully it doesn't turn green. And this I'm being a little bit more generous with. Yellows are a little bit lighter when they dry. And so all these paints that you're having right now will definitely dry lighter than you put them down. So that's something to remember. So going a little darker is okay sometimes. It just depends. We'll bring a little bit of pinkish purple. I really need to remember the names of my paints. Back over here, building up contrast. So I always talk about tones in pretty much every one of my videos, and basically what I'm meaning is I'm just coming back over with more intense colors and trying to get those to build upon each other. So I'm going in layers of a light wash, and then I'm building up that first layer to a second layer with more intense colors, and then sometimes you need to add multiple layers to get it up to the intensity you want. But you're basically working in layers, trying not to add too much water to your paper, but definitely just work in layers. You can even, for consistency, bring a small wash over this lighthouse, bring it right up. You can just have fun with it. There's really, Bob Ross it, just go happy mistakes, let's see. That's looking pretty good. I also had someone comment about how to do clouds. You just wad up a paper towel like this, very thin, and you come up and you just start blotching out where you think clouds look really good. Make sure you don't have paint on your paper towel that's you've used, because that'll go right onto your paper. And we'll try to be sparing. You know, everything you do, you want to be sparing with. You don't want to overdo it. Cool. It's looking fairly good. The yellow is a little too intense, I think. It's kind of turned a little green. That's okay. Okay, it's gonna get loud, but I'm gonna take a hair dryer, and you can speed up your drying process if you'd like. Yep, and that's looking quite nice, and that dried it pretty well. But see how much those colors faded? So we're gonna let those sit for a little bit and dry some more, but I'm gonna start working on my lighthouse. So it's got kind of a reddish roof in my reference photo. So we're gonna lay down a wash of that. Plus we've got some more brown trim. And these can be, you know, following a reference will help you kind of gauge what colors and how intense they should be. Or you can follow this painting like I said before. I'm mixing a little bit of black with my brown to give it a darker brown. And, you know, once again, being very loose. I'm not trying to be very specific. I'm just trying to add a wash over this to give it some life. You can start bringing in some shadows, like there's a little ledge here, so I'm going to extend that out, pull it down. Got a little too much off the side there, so you can always pull it out with your, if it's still wet, pull it out with your paper towel or whatever you're using. Oh, there's shadows. So we're trying to think the light source is coming from here and facing this way, so I'm trying to cast shadows according to where that light's coming from. So that's kind of the idea, and we'll build this up later too. This is just your base layer wash, and there'll be, you know, obviously it'll cast a shadow on the ground, so we'll do that. It really depends. You could do like a high noon piece and have that shadow cast directly down and almost no shadows. It's whatever you want to do. That's, like I said, I always say it, it's just whatever you want. It's supposed to be fun and a process, and it's not supposed to be stressful. At least that's not what I'm going for. So hopefully you find these enjoyable and not stressful at all. You're just supposed to paint along and have fun. That's all I ask. That's the best way to learn too, is not get frustrated with yourself. I still get frustrated with pretty much every one of my paintings at some point, but the least frustrated I've been is with these pen and wash paintings. Red door, red roof, keep it all consistent. For those shadows I just added in, I'm gonna bring a little bit of purple in, so you can do like a red and blue mixture. A lot of watercolors will only come with primary colors because the pigments are more pure. So you'll have to kind of mix your own colors, and learning about color theory can be kind of a pain. But for like a purple, you'd bring a red and a blue and mix them, and then I'd bring a little black in to dampen those down. And I'm just gonna pull that into the shadows we've already created. I'm even painting outside of the lines a little bit. I like that look, and we'll come back later with our pen and really adjust these. But you gotta think of where that shadow is gonna be cast a lot of the time, you know? Trying to keep everything consistent. And if you can really master lighting and contrast, your paintings will shine. I think that's one of the most important things you should do is lighting and contrast. That will bring so much life to your paintings, I think. Okay, for the grass, we're gonna add a little bit of green and mix it with a little bit of brown. I don't know if you can see that. Yeah, you should be able to. Yeah, and we'll just start building up right here. Gonna bring in a little bit more. Let's see, we really want that green though. There we go. That looks really good. And remember, these are going to dry a lot lighter than what you started with. So going a little bit more intense is okay. Within reason, you don't want to go so intense that they look unnatural. You know, we got some little grass over here you can pull up, add some more splashes over here. And it's the same brush, you know, just that little thin point can really bring out some grass. We're gonna have a little rocky cliff over here, so I'm gonna bring some more of my browns in. Pull that in right there. Keep in mind that your light's coming this way, so you want to leave some space for the light to hit those cliffs. We can bring a little bit of brown into our grass while it's still wet, if you want. And that'll dry nice and give it a nice ground look. More natural, anyway. That's my wife. I don't know if you can hear her singing in the background. She's getting ready for work. She's a beautiful voice. Cool, that's looking really good. So while that's drying, I'm gonna go work on my sky. Letting your layers dry can really help. Try not to go too crazy with them, and then come back to them later. Definitely don't let them settle for a bit. That's pretty intense. So if it's too intense, you just wet your brush, dry it off a little bit, and come back and pull that color. And see how easy that was to get that back to a more normal hue that's not so saturated. It's the nice thing about watercolors. If you work quick, they're pretty forgiving. If you wait, they're not. So. And just being random, you know, I'm not plotting out every cloud. I'm leaving some space for some clouds and stuff like that. Let's see, we're gonna try to bring in a little bit more yellow over here. So I just don't want them to be green. Hey, love. That's okay. Have fun.
Ooh, I love this.
You like this one?
Uh-huh. I'll see you after it's
Ooh, you're gonna make it in the video. Yeah.
Okay.
What were you saying?
Oh, I found out that I don't have work tomorrow.
Oh, lucky. Well, there you go.
Okay, love you.
Okay, I love you too. Let's see. Yep, so we're just building up those tones. Those yellows are kind of meh, but that's okay. Should have waited. That's what I get for not waiting for them to dry. That's okay though. For the water, we're gonna bring in some more blue. And just do a wash right there. I'm keeping my lines going horizontally instead of vertically, and that can help with consistency in your painting or even drawing, whatever art you choose. Keeping your brush strokes consistent can really help everything look nice and cohesive. Because if I had lines going this way, sometimes they'd shade a little weird and dry a little weird, and then you'd have all these conflicting lines, and it can be a little confusing. Or if that's the style you want to go for, some people make it work. It's just what I choose not to do. Bringing in some more green here. Make those cliffs a little bit more dark. Still working with a pretty wet layer, and it's okay if the greens and browns bleed into each other. You know, I am totally okay with that. Within reason. We don't want them to be ugly though. We've got this little path here, so we're gonna start that off with a nice brown. Well, my computer fell asleep, so hopefully I'm gonna start that up again so I can see my reference. There we go. So it looks like this white house has a little bit of like tan color to it. Something like that. Yep, so I'm bringing in a little tan. Leaving this side of the lighthouse more white though, because that's gonna be where our sun really hits it. Obviously the light's gonna be more yellow. Hit that. Same with these houses, they've got more tan to them. Cool, that's looking pretty good, I think. So maybe what I'll do is come back and do a little bit more work on these shadows. Adding in a little bit of blue. A little bit of blue in shadows always looks nice, like almost a purplish blue. You can go pretty intense. Let's see. Yeah, that's adding a ton. So what I did there was mixed some blue with some purple. Or pink with some, what did I do? Blue with some red to make purple. And I'm adding that into the shadows of my houses. Like the lighthouse and stuff, and on the ground. And that just, it always looks good. A little bit of purple in the shadows is what I've noticed. And letting it bleed, not too much, but letting it bleed is okay. Like how it's bled into that, I think looks good. It just adds to the effect. And even pulling more of that in. Yeah, that's looking nice. For that shadow on the ground, we can really come through and make some more contrast. Pulling in a little bit of black into that. And when it dries, we can come back always and add more, you know. Just having fun, that's all that matters. Pulling some more shadow right there. Cool, maybe we'll bring some shadows along these cliffs. Make them pop. Over on this side, we'll bring in more darkness into the sky, building up that contrast. I'm adding a little bit of purple, that dark purple we just put into the shadows. Pulling it every which way. You don't want your clouds to be too poppy because they'll distract. I've overdone that in the past, and even in some of my other tutorials. It's a hard balance. It's like your brain says, I'm gonna do some clouds and I'm gonna do those clouds so freaking well that they're gonna just shine. And then when you look at the piece as a whole, yeah, the clouds look good, but they distract from everything and they're too, my wife calls them loud. Too loud, which is a really good way to put it. And you definitely don't want that. You want everything to look cohesive. So trying to separate your brain and working in passes as well. So you're coming back to the clouds, going back to the lighthouse, jumping around, can kind of help your brain to stop wanting to paint things so intensely. We'll even bring in a little bit more because that's going to dry pretty light. And I really want the left side of the painting to have a ton of mood to it, because that right side will really pop if we do our left side really well. Still working with a pretty wet layer. Trying to add some shadows into the bottom of those clouds I created. And see, that's the problem with this paper. This paper is a little bit cheaper, so it starts to buckle. So with the arches, it's 100% cotton, and so it absorbs at a different rate, and it's magic. I don't know how to describe it. The arches paper, it's in my bio or in the description. It's so much more quality, and if you get it from a website like Dick Blick, you can get it for pretty cheap. I don't buy the blocks. The blocks are like pre-stretched, very expensive, very nice. They're like $80 a pad for like 12 sheets. Don't buy those. Rarely do I ever use those. I use just the regular watercolor pads. And they work just fine, honestly. Bringing in a little bit of black with my blue can really help give that a nice look like that. That's a little too. There we go. See if it's still wet. You can recover quite a bit. We don't want that line to be super defined on the water. Okay, we're going to bring back our blow dryer. Whoops. Make sure you have coffee while you do this. Coffee makes painting 10 times better. Just make sure that you do not dip your brush into your coffee water. It's happened before, and to many, many people, and it's a tragedy every time. Okay. It's getting cold though. I gotta drink it. Okay, we're gonna come back and start defining things better. So this is just a little bit more purplish pink into these shadows. Look how much that pops just on those ledges, and you can add some on the door, on the windows. So that's what I mean by contrast, is so that other layer was dry, and now this whole thing is really coming together just because we were patient and we waited and really built up our tones and contrast. And if you have any other videos you'd like me to expand on or anything like that, please let me know. It could be like cloud videos. I know I had one request for clouds. So maybe if I get enough people who are interested, I will expand on all this stuff. Or I'll just keep doing tutorials, whatever you guys want. Don't forget to like and subscribe. I hate saying that, but it really does help me out. You know, if you find these useful, that just helps out the channel. Like this video, that helps a ton too. That's very important for YouTube, I guess. But yeah, commenting, stuff like that. I love hearing from you guys, and especially seeing your work. If you can tag me with your work on Instagram, I had one girl already do that, and she did so good. And I'm considering, if we get enough interest as well, of doing an artist of the week, so where I feature people who complete the tutorial and then tag me in it on their Instagram or send it to me in their story. I would love to feature you guys on this and just give you guys shout outs for just being awesome. I can tell we've got a good crowd brewing here. Bringing in a little bit more gray into the shadow on the ground. maybe on the cliff as well. Coming back through with a very light wash of purple on the bottom of those clouds. Let's see. Yeah, it's looking pretty good so far. So now I can just come back with my pen and start, if it's dry, you know, sometimes you want to work in dry areas, but coming back through and just adding in more detail, like little bricks on your lighthouse. Don't go too crazy. I don't like how blocky that one was. But just coming back through and bringing out more of those details. After all, it is pen and wash, so emphasis on pen. This house needs a little bit more shadow, I think, right there. Yeah, that's looking pretty good. Oh, okay, let's see. You can go as dark or as light as you want with these colors. It's up to you. There's no hard and fast rule. Just make sure the most important thing, as dumb as it sounds, is have fun with it. Don't get frustrated. If you get frustrated, you'll get discouraged and you'll never want to paint. You'll associate painting with bad memories, and we don't want that. Just coming through and adding details. Even in the shadows, you can bring some little crosshatch lines in up on the grass, you know, squiggly lines. Up on our cliff, we can define that some more. And like I said, I'm, you know, being very loosey with these lines. I'm even squiggling quite a bit. Bring in some grass. That's the fun part about pen and ink, or ink and wash, is you're not bound to realism, so you might as well just make it extravagant, you know? Let's see, that's looking pretty cool. I really like that. That's also really helping separate our foreground from our background. So our foreground will be the lighthouse, the background will be the background, obviously. But just gives it separation. The more detail you can bring into the foreground with your pen and colors and stuff, the better. Okay, but we're also gonna, in the background, I wanted to do like a little mountain range. So maybe what we'll do is bring another purple in, and just with a very light wash, add it back here. We're gonna bring that out. This will be kind of our horizon line. Like I said, I'm not going too intense. This will just make that ocean feel a little bit more natural right now. Because right now it's just kind of sitting there in the middle of nowhere. There's no horizon line. Bring that guy up pretty high. Can even bring in a little bit more contrast. My favorite line to say. Contrast and tones. And even a little bit of dark blue at the base of this. You know, a little bit of lines. Very thin lines, using just very lightly the tip of your brush can pull some cool looking waves in. I'm keeping them all going horizontal again, especially for the water. But could you imagine if I were doing vertical lines, how weird that would look? So it's important to always be thinking, okay, where do I want my lines? How do I want them to face? Are they going to be consistent? Where's my light source coming from? Stuff like that. Yeah, it's looking nice. Remember, not going too intense. You're just trying to get it. You can always come back later. But if you overdo it, it's going to be a lot harder to fix it. So, making sure that you're paying attention to that. Another thing you can do, if you have it, is a white pen. This is a very fine point white ink pen. Come through and pull out a little bit of detail into the waves with it. I like this technique for water, being sparing with it. You don't have to, just sometimes I like it. But let's see, I think this whole thing needs a little bit more contrast. Let's see. Even bring in a little line into the background. Very broken up, you know, you don't want to bring attention to it. Maybe add some little pebbles into the walkway. Little lines here and there. A little bit of lines into the shadows. We got a little chimney. Yeah, that's looking pretty good, I think. You can even bring your white pen back here and pull out in your roof and stuff. Just some fun little shapes. Pretty cool. You don't want to add too much to this because it'll start to look funkadelic, but bring some shine into those windows. Let's see. Let's pull our tape off and see how it looks. With this, if you pull slowly and to the side, there's less chance of you ripping your paper. I also didn't press it super hard into my paper at the beginning. But there's always that chance, especially with cheaper papers, they will tend to rip and tear. So just being very gentle when you pull. Like so. And you can always come back through. And if you're not happy with something like the water, for me, you can always come back through and just build up your tones. Once you pull off your tape though, remember that you pulled it off so you don't go over that border. Unless you want to. It can look good, but bringing in that blue a little bit more. Contrast. That's my favorite word ever, apparently. Let's see. Leaving a little white space for the reflection in the water can always look nice too. And I want to bring in some more pink into the sky. Purple, pink, whatever it was. Oh, I almost went over my border, see? I do not want to do that personally for mine. Just because I like semi-clean borders. Let's see if I can't pull that out. Yeah, that's pretty good. bit more gray and purple onto the bottom of those clouds. And the further your clouds go away, the thinner they should be. And that's perspective as well. But you don't want to make your sky too busy. I'm running the risk of overdoing it here, so I'm going to call it good on the sky. So I'm going to come back with a little bit more brown and add it into those purple mountains. Oh, see, I went over my border. I forgot. That's okay. It's okay, Aaron. Bringing a little bit of that brown into the water for a kind of reflective quality. And then coming back over and just adding in another layer of tones to my painting. Building up areas I think that need it. Being sparing and aware that too much can be a bad thing. That's a very good rule to live by. It's not always the best to keep working on it. Sometimes you just gotta say, you know what? We're good. It's done, and just call it. Bring in a little bit more green. Make it more lush. And I really think those shadows on the ground need some more purple. Maybe a little bit of black under there. Just trying to imagine where the light's coming from and stuff like that. All right, guys, and I think that will wrap it up. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and to subscribe and comment on this video. Let me know how I'm doing. Let me know if the longer tutorials are working. It really helps me out. The more interactive you guys are with me, the better. That helps my YouTube channel grow, and I'll continue to provide you guys with as many tutorials as I can. But thanks for joining me today, and I'll catch you on the next one. See you guys.